Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, my name is Wayne Callan, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled Social Confidence, How to Help Students with ADHD Re-Acclimate to In-Person School and Friends. The pandemic has altered our social routines, but now that in-person classes are opening again, the question is your child ready to socialize face-to-face? Social anxiety is real, and its sources are different for girls and boys. When ADHD is factored into the mix, feelings of trepidation make all the more sense. In this webinar, parents, clinicians, and educators will learn to recognize the signs of social anxiety, as well as the coaching skills they need to help children and teens return to in-person school with confidence. Leading today's presentation is Caroline Maguire, author, speaker, frequent media contributor, and founder of a social emotional learning methodology. She holds a Master's of Education degree, and since 2004, her primary focus has been to help people of all ages make friends and thrive. She is the author of Why Will No One Play With Me?, the winner of the Best Parenting and Family Book 2020, of 2020, as awarded by American Book Fest, and co-collaborator on the newly released website howtoscl.com, a daily social emotional learning platform anyone can incorporate into daily life. Before I hand over the microphone to Caroline, I have just a few housekeeping items. Those of you tuned into the live webinar may download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. And if you are interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you receive around an hour after the live broadcast. If you are listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 372 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the Certificate of Attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Finally, the sponsor of this week's webinar is Play Attention, Enhance Brain Health and Performance. For over 25 years, Play Attention has been helping children and adults thrive and succeed at home, school, and work. Their NASA-inspired technology and cognitive exercises improve executive function and self-regulation. Each program includes a lifetime membership and a personal executive function coach to customize your plan along the way. Click on the hyperlink to schedule your free one-on-one consultation to discuss a customized executive function training plan for you. Or you can call 800-788-6786 or go to their website, www.playattention.com. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. You can ask questions of Caroline during her presentation, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can after she is done. So with all that being said, I'll turn it over to Caroline. Thanks so much for being with us today, Caroline.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited about this topic, everyone. Welcome. I think this is a topic that is near and dear to many people's hearts. And so I want to start by saying that I think that this fall is going to be very important. I think it is a hard re-entry if your child is struggling or teen or even young adult. I think that this webinar is going to give you a lot of key information. I was just telling Wayne, I could speak about this all day. I want to first say that confidence comes from doing and also knowing that things can work out. So when your child is facing this fall and trying to re-enter and trying to be social, if they had a history of social struggles, which we know many kids with ADHD do, they may feel a lack of confidence because they don't sort of believe everything can work out. And one of the things I want to say is we can shift that mindset and really help them feel things are going to work out. And parents and grandparents and special friends are really a huge part of that. Because when they've done longitudinal research, they show that having people in your life you can turn to is key. So even if your teenager is rebuffing you, which we're going to talk about, remember that them knowing you're there is actually really key. We're re-entering the social world. In many cases, kids were virtual school or not in school and homeschooling, and that can spur anxiety in anyone. There's lots of research and media coming out showing that kids who didn't struggle socially are feeling that anxiety, let alone our kiddos with ADHD who sometimes have struggled socially in the past or have struggled with what I say is how. How do I do this? So I want to give that context and just say sometimes our kids find this stuff baffling, and that might be why you get a wall of resistance. I want to also say that this is for all ages. When you use these methods, you can use them with anybody, any kid in your household, and they really can help. Social relationships and social communication skills that are so key are really built on a few things. One, we have here the elements of relationships. One is this give and take. We learn from play and from reciprocity. We learn from give and take, having interactions where we realize, as one kid said to me recently, I watch people, I see what they do, and if they get in trouble, I don't do that anymore. So having that reciprocity that we've been missing is really, really important in how kids learn social skills. So it is not a surprise to me that kids may have some lagging skills and they may be a bit behind. They haven't had some of the formative experiences that they needed to for their current peers, and we can catch them up. We're going to do exactly what we do when a kid has any lagging skill. We're going to give them the practice, the forum, and the skills to help them move forward. Now, we know that ADHD kids are sometimes 3 to 5 years behind their same age peers, which means that some of our kids also have that added on top. And again, we don't leave them where they are. We're going to try to help them and coach them and move them forward. And that's where your role is going to come in. This give and take also means that kids need to watch and mirror people. We learn from social models. The old adage from grandmas everywhere, monkey see, monkey do. And so they haven't had that. And so now as we re-enter, that's going to be really key. And I'm going to talk to you about how we can help our kids be better noticers and observers, because I will just speak for myself. I don't always notice things as a person with ADHD, and therefore I don't always notice the social models. And you have to get better at that. The other thing I want to mention is that part of being social is learning to adapt, right? You see a group, you notice what they're doing, and then you adapt. And that is how you actually learn, you adjust. We have been in an online situation. There are benefits to online. Some kids do very well in a virtual world, especially if they are shy, they are introverted, they are anxious. Sometimes they do well, and then they translate that into the real world with your help. And we're going to talk about that. But the thing about being in a virtual world is that you don't have to adapt as much. So you may be seeing your child be very tired, very fatigued at the end of the day because they haven't had those demands on them, right? The demands of what's going on for them in both the classroom and socially. And there are kids who really carry a lot of anxiety around this. So we're going to tell you How do we help them and move forward? As I said, I'm not really surprised some kids' skills are a little bit rusty. That's what I'm calling it. Some of the skills that are rusty are making conversation, right? I have even had our adults talking about that, right? We've been making conversation, but it's been online. Now we're in person, and suddenly you're realizing how fast paced it is. You can't write things down. You can't think of something later quite as easily. A lot of kids with ADHD struggle with making chit chat. Sometimes we think it's boring, or we struggle with, how do I bridge in a conversation? How do I keep the topic going? We're going to talk about that today. Joining a group, physically reaching out and joining a group. This is something I've been working on a lot. I am actually working on videos and some other things to show kids how to join a group, but we can help them with that. And what's really amazing about being in person is that they're going to get to see different people and make that connection. Reaching out to peers can be a little more scary in person, right? Remember back when you were young, walking across the hallway to somebody. It's a little more scary, and we're going to talk about how we can make that a little better. Self-regulation, right? Something that our kids struggle with, and adapting. Tolerating schedule and environmental changes, right? So there's a lot coming at them now, and they're having to tolerate that. And then sometimes social might go into the back of their mind because they're thinking about those schedule changes and those. Actually, we have executive function, the management system of the brain, and that management system is something that we know is weaker in ADHD kids. And so that's all coming at them, and they may not necessarily have the executive function skills to manage it. Tolerating and sharing and meeting people in the hallway, meeting new people in different activities, sharing, adapting, listening, I would add, and adapting to the needs and desires of a group, right? So now suddenly you're moving class to class, you're moving group to group, you're in activities, and you have to listen and adapt to that group in a way that's not as required online. One of the things I want to talk about before we get into the kid who's not necessarily open to this, which we will talk about, don't worry, is that there are certain elements needed to make friends. So I would ask you to, you can have these slides, you can download them, and I would love you to think about whether or not your child has these opportunities. These are the opportunities you need to connect, right? So the elements needed to make friends are things like shared experiences, right? So all the things we've talked about, making chit chat, joining a group, adapting to a group, having the actual interactions with people really come from having shared experiences. Now, a lot of things were shut down the past couple of years, and kids really struggle with wanting to join a club or wanting to be part of an activity. Now, much of that is open, but they haven't had the practice. And some of you are probably madly writing in the chat, my kid won't join anything. We're going to get to that, but here's my sales pitch for why shared experiences are key. We're going to talk about chit chat. Shared experiences allow you to have commonality and actually have something to talk about. So they are also practice opportunities, right? So when you go to a place or you have an experience with your peers, you join something, you get to practice and you get to sort of be in the trenches together. The other one is ability to reach out and make conversation with peers, right? I have kids who are so shy or shut down that when someone talks to them, they don't even respond, because my clients really have had a hard time, and sometimes they really don't know how to respond. So we're going to talk about how to build that, but that's one of the elements needed to make friends, right? You have to be able to chat with people, connect with them, and get to know them. Knowledge of pop culture. I put this in here even though it's one that some of my clients and some of the people who write me many emails would say, well, I don't need this. Here's the thing. If you can connect about topics and things that everyone is talking about, you can join in the conversation. So I want kids to find their people. I want them to find the kids who are like them and share interests with them. But I also want them to be able to join in different conversations and find out who are their people, who are the kids who share interests. Having a little bit of knowledge of pop culture, what's going on, being able to sort of look around the school and hear what's happening is really key. And then this is the tough one. Self-management and coping with emotions is definitely an element we need. And then I really want to say that I think team activities can be something key. If all your activities are more individualized, then it's harder for you to foster that sort of in the trenches thing and connection. I am all for things that are, swim, for instance. You're on a team, but you're individual. And I know some of our kiddos don't do as well with certain team-based activities, but just to have that in your mind, right? So that as you're evaluating and looking at what's going on for this kid, why are they struggling? What's their social setup? I want us to think about the actual opportunities they have to be social and to meet and connect with people, because it's really important. I have literally had kids where we work on this and this changes their social game completely. The other thing is understanding of the social world. So some of our kids may not notice social cues, may not notice unspoken rules and things and social norms that are going on, or they may have a mindset or a mentality that it's okay to be a certain way, and that alienates people. So one of the things we can work on is coaching them using open questions and reflective listening, which I'm not going to talk about today, but if you go to my website, Caroline Maguire, author.com, I talk about it a lot, which is how to communicate in a way that brings your kid into the collaborative conversation and doesn't alienate them. And so I want to mention it because helping them to think about the social world is a great way to help them navigate it. So I know that there are many, many people who are watching this saying, but my kid won't, right? My kid isn't interested. And I want to first say that many kids are a little shut down. Maybe they were okay before COVID and now they're struggling. And that's one thing that we definitely want to talk about. Rejection sensitivity is something we've talked about a lot in the past couple of years. And it's this idea that you have your limbic system is engaged. You go into this overwhelm of fight, flight, and freeze. And people can spend all day in that defensive fight, flight, or freeze cascade and feel things more deeply. And it doesn't really matter whether or not their reaction is justified. It matters how they feel. And so as a parent, you may find that your child is really bristling at any advice you're giving them, and maybe you're giving them great advice, or they are really, really struggling with being social, that their anxiety engages and they go into the fight, flight, or freeze process and they have this rejection sensitivity and therefore things are hard. I definitely want to say that there are many experts on anxiety. I don't pretend to be one. I'm not a licensed therapist like Dr. Sharon Saline, but I do want to validate this as something you can work on and that we can definitely work on social skills, even if a child has anxiety or rejection sensitivity. We have to know that as we go through the process of working on any of the skills I'm going to talk about today, this is going to come up and we're going to have to find coping mechanisms. And we know that this is something that does come up a lot. A lot of my clients who experience this, we come up with a pregame, we come up with coping mechanisms should this engage, and we do a little bit of work on practice skills. And as we move through the process, this comes up, we cope with it, and then we keep going. And a lot of times we are working with a therapist to help them as well. I have an example here, which is that I was working with a young woman. We were working on chit chat and we were working on talking to other kids at school and trying to sort of get to know them. And as we would practice in our one-on-one sessions, it would go really well. But then when she got to school, she would have that anxiety engage. And so we have to help her with coping mechanisms, maybe involve school staff so that she can feel more comfortable. And in many cases, we practice with family, friends, because practice starts to create those neural pathways and starts to let the kid know, I did this with my family. I did this at a barbecue. Now maybe I can do it at school. So I want to make sure we talk about this idea of the social anxiety because it is very real today. There are signs that your child may have anxiety that is becoming more debilitating, and maybe you want to help them to get with a professional. Trouble sleeping, weight gain, fear of being alone, nail biting, picking at skin, overly self-critical avoidance, right? Withdrawal. And what I would say is a lot of kids have experienced this. And if it is becoming something that keeps them from enjoying what they have done in the past or that keeps them from engaging, then you may want to seek a professional because we want to give them all the support we can. A lot of kids have anxiety because this all seems very daunting to them. It may be that this isn't their forte and it feels like, how do I do this? So one of the things you want to do if your child is a little more resistant or they get their back up or things end in drama, right, is have more small collaborative conversations. I talk a lot in the work I do about using open questions and reflective listening, which is to reflect back what they say or to ask them a question. But I also want to say we have to remember that they may not know how and that this may be hard for them. I would say that shifting their mindset about, for instance, joining a club is something that's going to happen in small conversations over time. And that maybe that you ask a question, you hear what they have to say, and then you let it go for that day. In the car is a fabulous way to do this because you're not looking directly at them and they tend to open up more. Talking about their concerns and validating them. Remember, this feels like a lot to them. I wouldn't ban friends and I wouldn't ban online activities, but I would help them readjust their relationship to it and readjust how much they're doing it. Take an interest in their interests and work on your intimacy and relationship with them so that you can have access and coach them. And again, I could talk all day about this, but I think it's really important to remember that this process that I'm about to talk about may take time, and you may have to really kind of make baby steps, and then they will come eventually toward the mindset that, hey, I need to join something. This is essential. One of the things I have been working on this spring and summer and now into fall is a roadmap to connection. I had the realization that most of my clients and most children with ADHD, teens and adults, didn't really know exactly how to foster connection and how to cope with these rusty social skills. So this is just a small part of it, but I really want to give you the key things. We have to build on each conversation we have. So if you run into someone and you think they might be a potential friend candidate, or you have a great group project with someone, to build on the conversation and try to bond with them and to grow that bond. To reach out between conversations. So you may have heard this from your child. They talk to someone, they really like them, and then they never get to speak to them again, or they're waiting for the next opportunity. Again, that comes into those shared experiences where I want them to have those social opportunities to continue the conversation. Engaging in those shared experiences and trying to meet potential friends outside of school. Now, the outside of school thing, it takes a while to build toward that. We as parents and adults, we tend to push that right away. Why don't you have a play date with them? Why don't you see them? Especially with teenagers, I would suggest doing the process I'm about to show you where we nurture these hangouts at school, running into them, chatting with them, texting with them, maybe even online with them. And then we work towards seeing people outside of school, because that feels like a less gigantic ask on the part of our teens. One of the things I do want to encourage teenagers to do, and children, is to be in environments where they can meet people, right? And so that's why we started with those elements. So chit chat is something that I'm going to tell you I used to not like myself. Many kids with ADHD resist chit chat. They find it boring. They tell you it's not necessary. All these things are probably ringing bells. Here's my sales pitch that you can use. Chit chat actually has a purpose. Chit chat isn't just polite. It is something you do to find out and get to know people. It's so that you know what they're about. You understand who they are. There was a University of Chicago study that showed that 47% of the participants thought that people might talk to them, a stranger, whereas 100% of the participants in this study were able to talk to a stranger. So we also have this misnomer that people don't want to chat with us. It's boring. There's no purpose. I don't have to. But it helps you. It helps you find out, feel out people. Are they into the same things you are? Detect common interests, build trust and intimacy. We as ADHDers, and I talk about this a lot in my work, tend to rush in and we want to be best friends with everyone. But other people build intimacy, and there's a reciprocity of sharing. I share a little, then you share a little. I find out about you, you find out about me. And so chit chat and talking in the hall and doing a project with someone and seeing them at drama and seeing them at football, it all helps you find out their likes and dislikes. And there's a purpose, right? So one of the things we can do with our kids is work on that chit chat and then ask them what the purpose is. Ask them what's the resistance to it. Because part of this roadmap to connection and sort of road back for these rusty social skills is honestly learning to make chit chat. I want them to have practice opportunities. Now, I'm not delusional. I know many of you are going to say, but my kid won't, they resist, they won't join anything. Then I would say is the journey. The journey is for you to have these small conversations and try to see if there's something they could be interested in that they could join. I also would say if they join something online and they really love it, then you could use that as a breaking off point to try to get them to fulcrum into actually doing something in person. Practice opportunities, we want to look for places they can play, join, connect. You can practice with friends and family. You can have, barbecues in your home so that they can practice making chit chat, and then give them the mission. Today, we're going to use the skills we've been building and we're going to practice. Many of the kids that I work with who have anxiety, we sort of practice in these safe environments, and then we bridge toward talking to someone in the hall, talking to someone at soccer. So I want to say that this probably has some starts and stops. It's not just your kid, it's the way it works. And it happens in stages. So many of the kids I work with, we're working on a skill, then we have a little roadblock, we work through the roadblock, and then we keep going. But the practice piece is really key because many of the kids don't know how. And making conversation is something that is not necessarily coming easily to them. I have a lot of activities about this in Why Will No One Play With Me, but I'm just going to give you a little glimpse. When we are making conversation with someone, we want to observe them and ask questions and talk about them and what they're interested in. You also want to employ something I call social spy. Now, social spy can help those of us who aren't as observant and who don't know something about people to really figure out what is it that this person is interested in. So I'm going to talk about it in a minute. part of this chit chat and conversation builds intimacy, right? So it allows you to grow and bond and share experiences. And many times kids will tell me, I felt like a third wheel, or I was so nervous I couldn't talk. And so that's why I say it's going to build over time. It's going to be something where you slowly help them to build this chit chat muscle and to find out about people and to share experiences with them and to see that there's this connection. That's where social spy comes in. Social spy is something that I have a lot about out there, which is that you use your observation skills. You go into school, you go into an activity, you don't necessarily look directly at people, but you would actually watch and observe and try to find out more about people. Many of the kids I work with can't tell me what people talk about at school, what someone is interested in, whether or not they like, manga, whether or not they are interested in certain sports. And so social spy allows you to be a little bit of a sleuth and go to school and try to find out more about the person. And so you sort of watch without watching. And I actually have a bunch of videos about this coming on my new website, CarolineMaguireAuthor.com, so that they can see real kids practicing. One of the big things that I do to practice making conversation is called build on that. You take Jenga pieces and you sit and you have a conversation. You can also do this without Jenga over dinner. You can do it in the car, where you pick a topic and we practice going back and forth and having that reciprocal conversation. Part of this is to make kids easier on it. They can do this with family, they can do this with friends, and this is going to help them build that confidence. It also means that as they go through and things come up, I don't know how to bridge, I don't know how to continue a topic. When we run out of steam, I just stop talking. You can practice working out those kinks. And I have a lot about this in Why Will No One Play With Me, but I think the important thing is conversations build on each other. And if your child is having trouble with that and they just sit silent, or maybe they talk too much and interrupt and blurt, this is definitely something we can work on. And there have been articles in the Wall Street Journal and stuff about how everybody is sort of rusty about this. So the other tip I have is you can use that as an excuse. If your child is a little resistant to working on this, you can say that everybody in the world, everybody in the post-COVID era is saying that they need to work on these skills. The other thing I've been saying to kids lately is that there are millions of business books written about communication skills, and that there are a lot of people working on them, not just them. One of the things that I really find in this social roadmap is that kids need to reach out between these little conversations or big conversations or play dates. So one of the things I've been asking kids to do is do one thing a day toward their social connection. So if your kid is a little bit resistant and they tell you that they aren't going to engage in some of these big things. One a day is this idea that you send a text, join a group chat, share an emoji with someone, and you would be just reaching out in these little ways in between your social interactions, so that you remind people about yourself, so that you learn about them, so that you make them laugh, so that you have this connection. And I have a whole roadmap for this coming, but the idea here is that a lot of our kids forget that you have to reach out between conversations. You can't just, have a conversation that's great and powerful and then never speak to the person and then expect them to have a play date or connect with you or become your friend, right? If you think about the reciprocity and the way that friendships grow in your own life, think about how many small reach outs, how many ways in which you saw the person, talked to the person, had these interactions, right? So that's what we want to do. We want to help them to foster this. And the reason that I chose online examples is that I find that that's the easiest way, that they will send a text or do social media or something in between seeing someone, but it doesn't have to be. I actually had kids who were in college, and the way that they would connect with someone was, in these ways that we had to go for COVID testing once a week at college. So they would talk to the person then, and then they would, sort of make sure that they met up with them a few other times during the week. But it's meant to be just a small outreach. Light reaches is what I'm calling this, can help move your relationship forward, right? You have the ability to have regular conversations, to learn more, to express your thinking, to build knowledge and shared experience, and to cultivate the relationship. So when you have a kid who needs to connect to other people, maybe their skills are rusty, these little outreaches of sending a funny picture, writing to someone, what is it that you're binge watching right now, is a way for them to foster that connection so that they really get to know someone. The way I put the light reach process is that they're going to think about someone, right? And that's where social spy comes in, because they need to think about that person. And if they don't know anything about them, they have nothing they could send, nothing they could reach out with, then that's when we go to social spy and we learn more about the person. We're going to initiate some chats, join some groups, chat at school, and then try to reach out in between. This way, we're reminding people, we're nurturing the relationship. And many parents write me that their kid just thinks relationships are going to happen. They don't just happen, right? We all know that. They take work, and connection is a verb. So this is something that you can help your child with that will allow them to connect. If they are very resistant to it or super anxious about them, ask them what they'd like to do. What is it that they'd like to hear from other people? And work on their skills with you, and then building their confidence in a way that will allow them to start to think about doing these things. I have some slides here that I am going to skip because I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I have some things that are going to be part of the presentation that are part of some of my new material that are all about the steps to actually do this process. So I have given you all, and you can download them, exactly how to initiate a gesture, how to ask an open question and comment, how to build on a topic, how to listen, which we know with ADHD, our listening skills may be part of the process we need to work on, how to make supportive conversations, supportive comments in a conversation where we encourage the person to talk more, how to read verbal and nonverbal signals. And then how to do, which is one of the hardest things, which is bridge. Many of the kids I work with, we have to memorize some things they can do when they feel like the conversation's lagging and they need to bridge to a new conversation. I have many, many, many free things and resources on my website, CarolineMaguireAuthor.com. And I have a free download, which is about playing games with your child to help them to learn to self-regulate. Just playing board games with your child and using some methods that I give you in this video can help them learn better self-regulation and to become a better good winner and a better good loser, because sometimes we do lose. And to learn how to manage and cope with emotions, which is a big piece of what gets in our way of having these conversations and doing these things. I want to also say that I've worked with many, many kids this year and over the lifetime of my coaching. And really, even if your kid is resistant or has anxiety, you as a parent, coach, and being supportive of your child and having these conversations in a non-judgmental way, things can improve tremendously. And so even if this takes a while, hang in there. You've got this. And if you need anything, you can reach me, hello@CarolineMaguireAuthor.com. I'm going to turn it back over to Wayne because I want to keep with our time and make sure we can answer plenty of questions.
Sure, and there are lots of good ones. My 13-year-old son, this is from a mom, can chit chat. His issue is not recognizing when a person is turned off by his chatter. He talks too much. How do I work with him on that?
That's a good one. So not recognizing social cues in that way can be a problem with kids with ADHD. The first thing I would do is, as a parent, ask permission that when you're chatting with him, that you would help him to notice that. So you can do two things. You can actually rehearse with him and show him and sort of ham it up what it is that people look like, and I have all this in my will know and play with me when they're not interested, and role play that with him so that he can recognize it. You can also ask for his permission that when you see him continuing and you're drifting off, that you just say, hey, is it okay if when that happens, I would ask you, what does my face show you right now? And I love videos. If you watch practically any episode of The Office, you can see people having that social dilemma. And the more kids see it, the more it comes alive for them. So you can watch those with your child and just ask them, what do they see? And then have a debriefing process. When they go somewhere, how did it go? What did you notice about people? And that can be their one thing that they're working on, noticing when people drift off.
Mm-hmm. Several people have asked, they have teens, and how do you feel about making a social connection through gaming? Does that count in terms of building social skills?
So I know that gaming is a big part of kids' social life, especially teens. And I don't think it should be the sole way that they socialize, because many times they don't translate those relationships into the real world. Sometimes they do, but many times they don't. And so they're not producing friends they can sit with at lunch or hang out with after school or be with in a in-person world. But I would never ban it because it's too important to kids and it may be their comfort zone. I would try to get them to find interests that maybe have similar, kernels in the in-person world and translate what those skills are. And I would ask them what they like about the gaming, what they like about how they are in the gaming, what feels comfortable, really lean in and try to understand it. But it can't be their sole thing. And I know for many kids it is, but I also don't want you to ban it because it might be their place of happiness.
Right. That's good advice. Is there a role for a therapist to play in terms of building social skills? A couple of parents have asked about that.
Absolutely. There are different types of therapists, and there are some therapists that absolutely have a background in building social skills. I think the key is if kids have anxiety or rejection sensitivity, there absolutely is a role for the therapist to either work with a coach or work with the kid on helping them to cope with and overcome that anxiety. The other thing is there's many therapists who do work on social skills. And the key that I would say is, what's that therapist's role? And if they're working on social skills, are they working on hard, concrete skills that the child needs to learn? Because you actually have to practice. But there are many play therapists and other therapists who can be an absolutely vital role.
Mm-hmm. How, this is from a mom again, how do you help a child who tries to be friendly with other peers, people, but is rejected?
That's really the hardest thing. So first, I would, even though this is very hard, step back and try to look at what makes that child rejected. What skills are they missing? What's the gap, and how does this interaction not go well? It's very, very painful, even this analysis. So I'm totally sympathetic, but if we can figure that out, then we can look at exactly what skills need to be built, and also to work on the mindset of the social world. Parents have this wonderful opportunity. We're there all the time. So whether you're entering the grocery store or whether you're chatting in the car, point out social things, ask them questions, ask them what their reaction is to stuff. We all have, thoughts in our head about social stuff. Share those thoughts and talk about it, and talk about, what are the social expectations in this situation and what do they notice, and have that sort of discussion, because that will also really help. But I think the big thing is this can all change. And I myself had that journey of change, and we have to sort of look at the actual skills that are missing and help build them. And that's kind of why I wrote Why Will No One Play With Me, so parents can have that information.
Mm-hmm. Several parents have asked, they're not very good. Their social skills are not the best, and they don't feel like they're in a position to teach their kids to build theirs. So I don't know if there's an answer for that one, but have you run into that at all with your clients? Yeah.
Yes. Actually, research shows that 50% of people with social skill struggles have a parent with social skill struggles. And whether it's acute or just something you've always struggled with yourself, I think it's a really important topic. I'm glad someone brought this up. And I think it's also very natural. A lot of us didn't have social models because we are the children of parents with ADHD, perhaps. So what I want to say is, first, you have a tremendous opportunity. If you work on your social skills, then you can actually help show your child that you are willing to lean into discomfort, that change is hard, but you're willing to do it. And you can actually show them a tremendous thing, which is getting help. Getting help is something we all want our children to do. And the more they see us model it, the more likely they are to do it. The other thing I want to say is that many, many parents, since Why Will No One Play With Me came out, have read it and tried to work on their own social skills to then help their child. So you may feel like you're not in a position, but honestly, you are in the best position, because if you talk about your struggles, if you work on your own skills, then you can actually help your child. And if you worry about like, oh, well, I'm not exactly sure the best way to do certain things, then, maybe you bring in somebody, a trusted friend, advisor, therapist, coach to help with the whole process. But I actually have had beautiful letters from people who are doing this. And I think it's absolutely the opportunity of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good way to say it. A couple of parents have brought up, you talked about observing and adapting to a group. A couple of parents have had struggles with their kids observing and adapting the wrong crowd. So they were peer pressure, etc. They were trying. So the parents are upset that they're trying to socialize with the wrong crowd. How does a parent handle that? Because they are trying to exert their social skills, but the end result is a group that, for one reason or another, the parent disapproves of.
Right. And I totally validate that. Peer group has been shown to be an absolutely great influence, especially with teenagers who perfectly naturally want to pull away from us and listen to their peers. I absolutely see this all the time. I want to say first that sometimes some kids are very influenced by other people, and they mime people, they mimic them, but they mimic people who don't have necessarily positive choices and behaviors. The more you grow your relationship with them, your intimacy with them, and talk about what they want, what friendship should mean, and what they want out of friendship, and don't ban, unless there's obviously safety issues, but to cultivate your relationship and get them thinking. Right? A lot of our kiddos, because of weak executive function, don't necessarily stop and think about the choices and the values and the people they're with. So as a parent, rather than having a big, huge conversation, having a lot of conversations about how do they want to be treated? How do they want to, who are they with? And are those people treating people well? When things come up, taking the opportunity to say, well, how did you feel about that choice? And then to also introduce them to environments and groups of people and shared experiences with the kind of kids you want to cultivate with them. I do think this is an opportunity to explore with a therapist, and maybe even do some family therapy. But I definitely think that it's something that, unless there's, immediate danger or safety issues, a lot of times it's something that kids go through and we have to coach them through it. But the more we're a partner, and explore with them versus just to say, you're done, you don't make good choices, you're not going to be with these people, the more we have a chance to influence them.
Mm-hmm. A couple of parents homeschool their child, and they were wondering if your advice, how does one get around building social skills when you're homeschooling your child?
I've had so many homeschool families even before COVID. And one of the things I would say is that most homeschool families do an absolutely fabulous job of having interests and other things that kids do. And so what I would say is part of your curriculum could be them joining activities where they can meet people, being part of a team, or having something where they can meet people and actually practice being social. So we know, by the way, that people who have positive social skills do better in the workplace and actually are more likely to be in leadership positions. So we want to cultivate this, right? This is just as important, if not more, than academics, in my humble opinion. Mm-hmm. So if we have that opportunity to shape that curriculum, which many of you do, let's put in it some activities where they can practice and connect to kids that are of interest or maybe support their academics. And then, time to play and be part of a group. Many of my homeschool families have actually been part of a wider, network where they get together and practice doing these skills. So I think there's a real opportunity, and it's just a matter of using some creativity.
Mm-hmm. One mom is talking about having a daughter with inattentive ADHD and anxiety, and she is labeling her an introvert, and she wants to know how she can get through to build social skills with a child who she deems is introverted.
Yeah, so introverts and folks with inattentive ADHD can be just as social as anyone else. They're just doing it in their own way. So one of the things I would say is that many folks who are inattentive would probably agree with me that they struggle sometimes with tuning in, noticing social cues, not always, but sometimes, mm-hmm. and also really being tuned into the world around them. So what we want to do with a kid like that is really similar to what we want to do with any kid. We want to help them to notice when they're not tuned in and have more of that mindfulness and self-awareness. We want to talk about, if they are an introvert, how much do they want to be social? What relationships do they need? How much do they need to sort of have a pregame and have downtime after, because it takes energy to be social, and to really help them cultivate relationships that fulfill them and to get over anything that they might struggle with. So if they have trouble reaching out or sustaining chit chat or doing some of those things, what can we do to help them overcome that? And then to talk about what they want out of social life, not what we extroverts want, what they want. Because I think that there's sometimes hesitation with any kid. And the more we help them and support them and acknowledge who they are, then we're going to address those lagging skills, and then also, really help them to find balance, right? No social isn't balance. Being overly social isn't balance. There's some place in the middle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Once again, several people, I know this is a general topic. Actually, there were a lot of questions about chit chat. How do you learn to chit chat? This is a mom. I'm so bad at it. I felt exactly like this my whole life. So, do you want to go a little deeper into the whole chit chat aspect on how to teach those skills?
Sure, absolutely. So, if you think about chit chat, and many people with ADHD or without struggle with chit chat, it's really about keeping and having a light conversation and following a topic as you're reciprocally going back and forth with someone, right? So, I say something and then they say something, and then I build on that. And I'm going to be really honest, the best way to practice this is to pick a bunch of topics and then maybe even make a list of things you've struggled with, right? I had trouble talking about the weather. I had trouble talking about the school board. And then to find a partner and to actually practice. Many of the adults that I work with actually, like we say that, your mission is anytime you're given an opportunity or opening, you're going to engage in chit chat. We practice, right? So we talk about a sport maybe, or we talk about the school board or the weather. And, I say something and then they say something and we add to the conversation, right? So we're on a topic and we're adding to that conversation. And we're trying to stay away from what is a sort of stereotypical ADHD characteristic, which is that we go to this deep, intimate conversation, because that's not what chit chat is about. So I really think the biggest thing is if you start to practice it and put intention around it, you're going to build it. And I actually have a bunch of videos that are about to come out where I role play and show this. And in the slides toward the end, I literally have how you go through this process. But, if they make it their intention to just always add a thought, add and build to the conversation.
Several people have already asked about they're waiting for those videos to hit the internet so they can, there's interest in them is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, that's great. That's why I did it. I'm so glad. I wanted them for years. And finally this summer I buckled down and made it happen.
That's great. Is social anxiety, this is a more general question, inherited?
I'm going to be really honest. I don't know the answer to that because I'm not a licensed therapist and I'm not an expert in it. But what I would say is what I know about anxiety is that sometimes there is a component of environment and a component in terms of brain setup. And so I would think that there might be. What I do know too is that when people have anxiety, it's very, very real to them. And so I want to stress to parents that if this is debilitating to kids and they're not engaging in what they want to, then getting them help and support is really going to be key.
I know you've been all positive about building social skills, but is there a social skill set that can be built or developed to help a child deal with a bully at school?
Yeah, actually, most research shows that kids who are bullied actually are kids who have a behavior that bothers other kids and sort of attracts that. And in no way am I saying that they deserve it, because they don't. But we know that there are many kids, and parents may relate to this, who are kind of ghosts. No one bothers with them. No one notices them. And they're in pain also. But the kids who tend to be bullied tend to have a behavior or some lagging social skills. So the biggest thing I would say is I want the bullies to go away. Believe me, I was terribly bullied. But when your child builds those skills and those communication methods and finds other people to connect to, they will be more protected, right? Because they will have a group. So it's a hard road. It's not a one-day thing. It's not a two-day thing, but I think it's worth doing because there's all kinds of benefits for them.
Well, I think the hour is about up, Caroline. That was fantastic. We all learned a lot. I know I did. So we appreciate you being here and hope you can come back.
Anytime, Wayne, whatever you ask, I will always come. I love this community. And if people go to CarolineMaguireAuthor.com, that new website will be launching in the next week. And please, parents, know this can all get better.
That's a great way to end it. And thank you to the attendees for joining us today and for contributing your voice to this ADHD community. Make sure you don't miss future Attitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. If you are listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 372 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.